During this presentation, I'll be talking about the effects training has on the games player on both aerobic and anaerobic adaptations, and how this will improve the overall performance of the player. I'll be talking about a rugby player for a games player. For this type of game, the performer must use their anaerobic system to sprint with the ball and also aerate for light jogs and getting back into position once making a tackle or a run. The intensity of this game varies due to the high-paced game being played at different intensities for everyone. Someone might be making many tackles and many runs, which would be a high intensity for them, but others might not be playing as intense. There are many components of fitness central to this activity. This includes muscular endurance and strength, cardiovascular endurance, and also flexibility. All these take place through the whole match, and they are tested during different times, such as muscular strength is used during a tackle to stop the person, and muscular endurance is capability of making many tackles and being able to carry on with the event. Cardiovascular endurance is used during the whole match as we are constantly running around, and flexibility during the scrum. As we are having to bend down to a very low position and an agile position too. We then need to improve these components to improve our performance, and this comes from many types of training. For muscular strength, we use weight training. This improves the muscle's ability to cope with high weights and increases our strength. We are able to make harder tackles to cope with heavier people running into us due to this. Due to our training, this has physical changes to our body. We recruit more fast glycolytic fibers in our trained muscles. This increases our muscular strength. Due to cardiovascular training, such as distant runs or so, our alveoli count increases, meaning we are able to intake more oxygen, meaning we continue exercise for a longer period of time due to the muscles having a higher supply of oxygen. Fit programs are then installed into the athlete's training to monitor their exercise program. It stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. For a rugby player, aerobic exercise is a key part of the game. As the game is a long and enjoyed event with various types of running, which involves the aerobic system. The frequency of aerobic training will be once in the gym and training at the club. Also, because the club training would encounter aerobic fitness as well, as it is mostly running. The type of intensity of this exercise would be submaximal to make sure it trains our aerobic system and not anaerobic. This would involve a long run done at this intensity, improve our oxygen intake and our ability with storing it. The type of training for this would be a continuous type of training. This is because it acts as a game experience as we are continuously having to run around. Either if it's running back to get and defend, or running to support our team when we are on the move constant. With training continuously, it helps with our performance in the actual game. The time of this training would be around an hour run or more depending on the athlete's ability. This should be a long enduring type of exercise, as rugby is 80 minutes of play and the training should relate to what the event is like. We then need to create a fit program for anaerobic training, just like aerobic. This would be a completely different type of program compared to aerobic. This would involve higher intensities and more interval types of training. The frequency of this type of training for a rugby player would be much regular than aerobic. This involves weight training and various sprints. A rugby athlete would usually be doing anaerobic training anywhere between 4 to 6 times a week. The intensity of this would be a high demand weight training to build up muscle and also become faster during sprint phases. The type would be a interval, as there are fast sprint phases during the match, which we work anaerobic to produce our energy. The amount of time which we spend on these exercises depends, with weight training being down to how many sets and reps, and the sprints would be around 10 to 15 seconds, but they would do many sprints, not just one. Cardiovascular and respiratory system adaptations. Due to us training anaerobically, such as resistance training and sprint training, our heart adapts to this. The heart walls become thicker. This is called hypertrophy. This means that there will now be a stronger contraction, higher stroke volume, and due to this a lower heart rate. Due to this adaptation, recovery will also take an impact. This will become quicker. If it's quicker at removing waste, the athlete will be able to recover quicker and compete again, or continue playing at high level intensity and carry out a quality performance. If the athlete is able to get oxygen to mitochondria quicker, it makes it easier to remove waste product and to supply the working muscle with oxygen which they need. This means we will not fatigue and that the training has helped and allowing us to perform for longer. By putting it into a sporting context, a rugby player will be able to run for a longer period of time without having the need to rest. By looking at the graph, we are able to see that the stroke volume has a higher line. This is because we are able to pump more blood out quicker due to the training. This means the plateau of the line will be later on, meaning we can work harder for longer. The image of the heart shows the hypertrophy. There are then changes on our neuromuscular system, which are, because of our training, revolved around our event. Due to weight training, our tendon strength becomes stronger. As our skeletal muscles get larger and stronger, connective tendons adapt to meet the increased demands to avoid injury. This allows our muscles to train harder, meaning we become stronger and our muscles grow. Because of adaptation, the rugby player will be able to train harder and avoid injury. Another adaptation of the neuromuscular system is that the fast glycolytic hypertrophy. This is the contraction becoming stronger due to weight training and events such as 100-meter sprints. Hyperplasia is the splitting of muscle cells which contribute to muscle growth. This allows us to become stronger and our muscles to grow. These adaptations allow our muscles to grow and to become more powerful. There are also fast oxidative fibers which adapt. These are able to produce more oxygen for our body to use while jogging. These increase in motor size while jogging or exercise like this. Proprioceptors also adapt to training. They provide information about joint angle, limb position, and the muscle length. They use information to avoid injury during performance or training. We can work at high intensity but not overdoing it. They become much better at reading information and giving feedback due to training. This is because the pathway of the proprioceptors gets strengthened due to replication of the training. This then becomes more familiar and gets used to the exercise, helping us with avoiding injury. This can aid our rugby performer. They are more likely to avoid injury and be able to continue with this training, such as their muscle spindles will be more responsive. Neural pathways is very much alike. They are alterations in reflex, cellular adaptations. Training makes reaction time quicker. More neurons are used during a larger contraction, making a bigger motor unit. These all contribute to our performer as we are able to react quicker and allow us to become more familiar with the pathway. The neurons do this by strengthening a certain pathway which is used regularly. As the motor unit is more familiar with it, it will be a much quicker reaction compared to a new pathway. One more adaptation is the force generation. As muscles strengthen, there are more motor units which are being used. As the muscle has increased in size, it must have more motor units to create a strong contraction. This means there is a larger force output due to training. This can increase, such as making us more powerful. This helps our athlete in rugby, as more force will allow us to run faster and pass the opposing team. From this image, it represents a in-game experience of how force generation can help us, as we can see the rugby player outrunning the opposing team. Our body has many energy systems in the anaerobic system. These adapt due to our training as well. Enzymes are catalysts which speed up chemical reactions. With training, the enzymes increase. This enhances the ability of the slow twitch muscles to generate ATP, which allow a longer use of ATP and better to resynthesize it. With this, it allows the rugby player to sprint for longer, meaning they will be able to outrun the opposition. Another adaptation is the fuel source. The adaptation comes from strength training. It increases the muscle cell's ability to store PC, phosphocreatine, allowing a rugby player to have short bursts on high intense speeds. If there is a high store of phosphocreatine, the athlete would use more PC if it was a greater store, and the rugby player can sprint quicker and won't use the lactic acid system as much, meaning there would be less recovery. Another adaptation is lactic acid buffering. This is to buffer accumulation of lactic acid. This is done by sodium bicarbonate supplements. They are used to neutralize the lactic acid, meaning we can work for longer at a higher intensity. The training for this is laps, and the body adjusts the lactic acid buildup, which means it becomes better at handling it, and the OBLA kicks in later, allowing us to work for harder. By looking at the graph, we can see the athlete's lactate threshold is around 1.212, and and the OBLA is 3.887. From this, we can see what would change if the athlete would train for a period of time. If the athlete trains, their lactate threshold will kick in much later and let the athlete cope with a higher amount of power before fatiguing and becoming tired. An adaptation made to the skeletal system due to anaerobic training is the bone density. Osteoblasts in the bone migrate to the surface of the bone, making it denser, allowing the manufacture of new cells at the outer layer known as periosteum. Weight-bearing exercise increases the width, density, and strength of our bones. There will now be less risk of injury and the ability to cope with high strain. This prevents osteoporosis. Osteoclasts are cells which destroy bone and reabsorb calcium. They play a key role in bone remodeling, helping to regulate bone growth. Weight-bearing exercises suppress osteoclast activity whilst maintaining healthy bone density. This allows the rugby athlete to train with larger weights, allowing the athlete to build up muscles to become stronger. Calcium builds up the bone and makes them stronger. By looking at the diagram, we are able to see the bone growth in the different stages of an adult, at birth, and a young. There is a huge amount of growth plate. At young, there's a huge amount of growth plate. This is later used up and replaced by bone marrow. The range of movement is also an adaptation made. The flexibility will increase our range of movement, and we are able to do flexibility training to improve this. From the image of the rugby player, we can see how flexibility helps us beat our opponent. With a higher range of movement, we are able to pull off movements which help us outplay the opposing team. Cartilage is also another adaptation made due to anaerobic training. Cartilage is connective tissues found in joints such as articulating surfaces of the joints. It gets replaced by bone during growth throughout the body. This helps the athlete with flexibility of movement and stability even more than the muscle, yet can be affected due to a high strain and heavy weight training. The negative impact on cartilage is osteoarthritis. This is a joint disease that results from the breakdown of cartilage, which is underlying the bone. This can cause stiffness and cause joint pain. The image of the bottom left shows the destruction of cartilage. This is the impact of weight training on our joints. The ligaments also change during the training of anaerobically. Ligaments are short bands of tough, flexible connective tissue which connects two bones and holds the joint together. With training, the ligaments will get used to the high strain of the meniscus, allowing the athlete to train harder, bigger weight, without getting injured by the snapping of ligaments. We then move on to what aerobic training does to our body. Our cardiovascular performance is one of the most important parts of training. Having a better cardiovascular output, the better our aerobic performance will be. From the graph, we are able to see the different levels of VO2 max due to aerobic training, with the pre-training VO2 max coming out at around 45 milliliters of VO2 and a speed of 12 kilometers, and for the VO2 max of post-training being around 56 milliliters and the speed being 16 kilometers. From this, we can see that the training has an effect on our performance and improves the ability which we perform at. This comes from training such as endurance training. This helps our rugby performance continue for a longer period of time without tiring and having a larger VO2 max. Like earlier, I've talked about the heart's hypertrophy. This is strengthening of the heart's chambers, meaning the heart will be able to move, have a more forceful contraction. This takes an effect on the heart rate and stroke volume. As stroke volume increases, the heart rate decreases. This is because the heart is able to pump out more blood, meaning stroke volume increases. With more blood being pumped out of the heart, it doesn't have to beat as often, meaning the heart rate decreases due to this. By looking at the stroke volume data, we can see the difference in pre-training and post-training, with a higher amount of blood being pumped out in post-training rather than pre-training. There is a condition due to the enlargement of the heart and the decreasing heart rate. This is called athlete's heart. For the heart rate graph, we can see that during pre-training, the heart had trouble with adjusting to the increase of the treadmill speed. We can also see that the heart rate is higher to start with and ends higher. During post-training, the heart adapts to increase in speed very quickly and has a much lower heart rate during the exercise overall. With all these adaptations happening to the heart, this takes an effect of the cardiac output. The cardiac output will decrease due to the higher level of stroke volume. This improves the heart's ability with dealing with the exercise and will be able to sustain a higher VO2 max due to this.